Hello and welcome to Falcon Blues TV. I'm Cam Davis and I'm back with another match preview for this week's game where Everton are going to be travelling to face Tottenham Hotspur. It's an 8 PM kickoff on Monday the 7th of March and we are live on Sky Sports. Before we get into the video, if you wouldn't mind going down, liking and subscribing, we'd really appreciate it. Without further ado, let's get into the video. So Everton have just come off the back of an disappointing but spirited loss at home to City. Everyone's already discussed everything that needs to be discussed from that game. Robbed out of a point. I'd argue that we were the better side in that game, and I think if we can perform like that, even a tiny bit like that in the rest of these games, we won't be anywhere near relegation. So I think it is promising. It's just obviously a shame the situation that surrounded it. I'm recording this on a Wednesday, just after Spurs have played in the Cup, just before we play in the Cup. So Spurs have obviously just been knocked out by Middlesbrough in the Cup, which is good news. It's another weaker team per se, even though they've already beaten United and Spurs to potentially get in the next round should we beat Boreham Wood. But in the league, they recently thrashed Leeds 4-0. I thought they were good in that game, but obviously Leeds are kind of in free fall at the moment, so it doesn't say a great deal about Spurs as it does about Leeds, and they obviously sacked Bielsa just after that game. So I think while they looked very potent, it's the way the Spurs have been lately, it doesn't really mean a great deal. As I said, they have been a bit flip-flappy. They've won 2 of their last 7. Before they'd obviously lost to Middlesbrough. Their last 4 games were alternate wins and losses, so they won 1, lost 1, won 1, lost 1. Judging by that, it means that we should win the next one. I mean, if you go and buy that pattern in the league form, but it just shows that Spurs are the most unpredictable side, because one of the wins was against Man City, one of the losses was against Burnley. It just shows that it's impossible to really predict Spurs at the moment. We did win our last game against Spurs at their stadium, which was obviously first game of last season, the Calvert-Lewin header, when we still had Ancelotti. We've played them a few times since then, and we've actually got a few decent results. We haven't lost in the last 4 that we've played against them in all competitions. Obviously, that includes the 5-4 win at Goodison in the Cup last year as well. But Kane does love a goal against Everton. He scored 11 in his last 11 against us in all competitions. Another guy who loves a goal against us is Dele Alli. He'll obviously be on our side this time. It's the first time he returns to face Spurs since his January move. I'm not sure whether he'll get a great deal of playing time, but it'll be interesting to see whether he gets another half an hour or 20 minutes on the end. I think Lampard's probably looking for the perfect opportunity to bed him in, because I think City, Spurs, the last 3 games haven't really facilitated that, and the games before that were kind of too important to take risks, and with the injuries we've had as well. Obviously, we are teetering just above the relegation zone. Burnley's loss last night, as of recording, against Leicester was important, which means we still are not in the relegation zone, but we need to start picking up points. I don't think this is one of the games where we should be expecting to pick up points, but in the games following, we definitely need to start picking up points. Calvert-Lewin is another one who also loves a goal against Spurs. He's not been great since he's come back, but he'll be slowly building himself back up to full fitness, and I like to think that he'll cause their centre-backs a bit of issues if he does play, but I think he might still be injured. Obviously, he re-injured himself a week or so ago, and it said about a week to 10 days. So I think it'd be a push to see him back in the squad, but another one, obviously Richarlison, who deputised for him, has also scored a few goals against Spurs in recent years. So I think we're standing in pretty good stead for this game. Injuries are kind of pretty similar to how they've been all the time recently. Mina, Godfrey, Davis, Delph, all still out. Van der Beek did have to go off injured in our last game against City. He pulled up, but he's since been revealed that it was just cramp. So you like to think that he'll be fit for the Spurs game, especially given the fact that he's cup tied and won't be playing against Boreham Wood, so he'll get a nice week, just over a week-long rest, and he should be fine to start. Spurs, on the other hand, they've not really got a great deal of injuries. The only 2 that I could see of note were Tanganga and Skip. It doesn't really change a great deal for Spurs. It just means that it's pretty obvious or pretty easy to predict who will play in those specific positions, left wing back and central midfield. So you imagine that they won't have a great deal of options other than them. The Everton team, therefore, would probably be something along the lines of Pickford in goal, Coleman at right back, Keane, Holgate, centre backs, and then it probably will be Kenny. I don't think Michaelenko seems quite ready to come back yet, especially after, I don't know whether many of you will have seen his Instagram post to the Russian captain Artem Zuba. It shows that obviously he's still, well, not still, but it's going to be a very damaging thing, obviously, this whole war to him, and I just wouldn't risk him. I wouldn't make him play when his head's going to be all over the place. His country's in absolute peril. I think Kenny will probably start, and then you imagine the midfield three will be the same, provided there's no injuries to Coro, Van der Beek and Alan. That's the most balanced midfield that I've seen Everton have in a long time. We went toe-to-toe with Manchester City's midfield all the way through. As I said, I thought we were the better side in that game and we had the better chances. I think I read somewhere as well that at half-time we'd limited City to their lowest expected goals all season, and it was the first time that another team, Everton, had more expected goals than Man City at half-time. And I thought, obviously, while in the second half they came back into it a lot more and had a lot more of the ball, they didn't really create a great deal of chances. They obviously scored off a little bit of a slice of good fortune, a bit of a mistake. And then we probably should have had that penalty at the end. So I think if we can continue with that midfield and the way that Spurs have the two central midfielders, obviously the wing-backs, we might be able to overrun them in midfield. That would probably mean our front three. Gray will most likely be fit. I think he'll probably get a bit of a bit part against Boreham Wood, and then we'll see him start against Spurs. So it'll probably be Gray, Gordon, and Richarlison through the middle. I'm quite happy with that. Quite a mobile front three. They've got quite sluggish centre backs, especially with Dyer. And while Romero looks decent, I still think there's probably mistakes in him. And obviously, as I'll move on to the Spurs defence and midfield, you'll see that I think Everton could definitely cause them a lot of problems. So Spurs' team, you probably think Lloris will start in goal. The back three is an interesting one. Dyer and Romero are, I'd say, pretty nailed on. And then you imagine it'll be Ben Davis or Davinson Sanchez. I prefer it to be Sanchez. I think he's a little bit less mobile than Ben Davis, obviously with him. Davis previously still being a full-back playing at centre-back. The wing-backs, you'll imagine, will be Sessegnon on the left, and then it'll be one of Doherty or Emerson Royale. I'd probably either or. Neither is great defensively, and if it's Gray or Gordon on that side, I like to think they'd get the better of either of them. I do think Royale is a little bit more likely to make a mistake, so I'd probably prefer it to be him. And Doherty has just played in the cup game against Middlesbrough at 120 minutes, and in the game previously against Leeds. So the midfield too, as I said, it's quite difficult, quite straightforward, but it'll be one of three. It has to be probably Højbjerg is nailed down, and then it'll be either Winks or it'll be the new signing Bentancur. I couldn't say which one it'll be, but having not seen a great deal of Bentancur, I couldn't really comment. But Winks, is a pretty solid player. He can pick a pass. He played a great ball through for Spurs' first goal against Leeds, I thought, but he's not going to set the world on fire. Neither is Højbjerg, and I think that's a midfield that you can definitely get at if it is those two. And the front three, therefore, will most likely be Son, Kulusevski, and Kane. Again, you might see one of them drop out for Bergwijn because they've all three of them featured in the Middlesbrough game and obviously featured against Leeds. But I think obviously off the back of that Middlesbrough game and the Leeds game, they've lost the last two. They're not exactly going to be in high spirits, and Conte seems to be going through mood shifts, always in some kind of spiral, some kind of breakdown. You don't know whether you're going to get a brilliant Spurs side or a terrible Spurs side, and I just think we have to obviously take things into our own hands to an extent, but the way Spurs play can definitely help us out on Monday. And I think that we're definitely in a good position to get a decent result. In terms of a prediction, it's obviously, as I said, with Spurs being the Spurs, it's a difficult one to predict. And Everton away from home, we've not been great since Lampard's come in. They're seventh, we're 17th, as I said, just above the relegation zone, but the form is quite similar in recent games, win one, lose one, not exactly picking up any consistency in terms of wins. But Lampard did say before the City game not to look at the league table. He said these games don't really affect the end of the season and how it'll be, and he's probably right about that. After this Spurs game, we've got a nice little run of Wolves at home, Newcastle at home, and Watford, all very winnable games, I think, especially with Wolves having lost the last two. So I think we could definitely look to get points in those games, but Spurs is one that I would be highlighting as if we show up and Spurs aren't quite on it, we can so easily come away with a result. In terms of predictions, as I said, I'd probably just go with a draw to be safe, because it is impossible to predict with Spurs. Maybe a 2-2 draw or something. I think we've seen a lot of goals in these kind of fixtures over the past few years, but you can let us know in the comments down below what you think the score is going to be, how you think the game will go, and thank you very much for watching. Up the Toffees.